Welcome to this seminar of research proposal entitled A Study on Communication Strategy in Conversation used by the students of English Cafe course in Surakarta. Firstly, I would like to tell you about my background of the study of this research. One of the most frequently studied language is English because it has been an international language. Speaking skill is one of the benchmarks for the success of a foreign language learner. So, people in this world are competing to master this skill. One of them is by taking extra lessons outside of school, namely an English course. To facilitate the mastery of speaking, the course makes a curriculum that emphasizes the use of speaking for the duration of teaching learning activities take place which are not in the formal education curriculum. It aims to familiarize students with speaking and communicating in English fluently. To solve this problem, tutors use communication strategies. Based on Fierce and Casper, communication strategy as potential conscious plans for solving what to an individual presents itself as a problem in reaching a particular communicative goal. In addition, communication strategy is defined as a systematic technique employed by a speaker to express his or her meaning when faced difficulty. From these explanations can be concluded that communication strategy is used when people face the difficulties in delivering their thoughts, message, and here researchers generally agree that the main purpose of communication strategy is to deal with communication problems. Based on the interview with one of tutors in English Cafe course, conversation is important to avoid misunderstanding in communication which is caused by lack of vocabulary and basic grammar. Also, for habituation for students so that they have self-confidence and are not afraid of being wrong. According to Journal of Arif Rahman, Communication Strategy in Learning English, an ethnographic research in International School ISO BSDCT, the conclusion of the journal is the students of junior high school used to communication strategies, verbal communication strategy and non-verbal communication strategy. Based on phenomenon above, the researcher is interested in conducting the research entitled A Study on Communication Strategy in Conversation used by students of English Cafe course in Surakarta. Next, the identification of study. Based on the background of study, it can be identified that there are some problems. First, students do not master in speaking English. Second, some students have lack of vocabulary. Third, some students have low grammar mastery. And fourth, students have low self-confidence in speaking English. See the limitation of study. In order to avoid too many study and explanation of the problem, the researcher limited the focus only in communication strategy in conversation used by students of English Cafe course in Surakarta. The research problems. What are the types of communication strategy in conversation used by students of English Cafe course in Surakarta? The objective of study. In general, the objective of the study is to know what types of communication strategies in conversation used by the students of English Cafe course in Surakarta. F. The benefits of the study. In this research, the speakers who want to speak English and face difficulties can read and learn the strategy to communicate in English. So the communication can run well and for learner can express their meaning easily when they want to speak English everywhere. It is also useful to teachers and tutors who teach English. It will help them to improve the way they teach communication in the class. For the course, the researcher hopes that this research will produce more active and successful students. Another benefit is that this study expected to show course students how to communicate with others. When the study is finished, it is expected that the study will be a benefit for English Cafe course method to gain students' communication strategy. G. Definition of key terms. First, communication. According to Keaton, 2011, in Lunenburg FC 2011, communication is the process of transmitting information and common understanding from one person to another. Second, communication strategy. A communication strategy is defined as a systematic technique employed by a speaker to express his or her meaning when faced difficulty. According to Corden. Third, speaking. According to Brown, 1994, states that speaking is an interactive process of constructing meaning that involves producing, receiving, and processing information. English conversation. Fourth, English conversation. According to Goffman, offered the following definition. Conversation is restrictively defined, might be identified as the talk occurring when a small number of participants come together and settle into what they perceive to be a few moments cut off from instrumental task, a period of idling felt to be an end in itself, during which everyone is accorded the right to talk as well as to listen, and without reference to a fixed schedule and no final agreement or sin, is demanded differences of opinion to be treated as unprejudicial to the continuing relationship of the participants. Next, review on related theories. A. Speaking skill. The first definition of speaking. Speaking is an interactive process of constructing meaning that involves producing, receiving, and processing information. Speaking requires that learners not only know how to produce specific points of language such as grammar, pronunciation, or vocabulary, or linguistic competence, but also that they understand where, why, and in what ways to produce language, or sociolinguistic competence. Second, difficulties of speaking. A problem is something that if it appears, many people will get dissatisfaction. It can make trouble and difficulty for him or herself or other people, and if people pursue a problem, they always want to lose it. Third, classroom speaking activities. A. Talk as interaction. This refers to what we normally mean by conversation and describes interaction which serves a primarily social function. The B. Talk as transaction. It refers to situation where the focus is on what is said or done. Burns distinguishes between two different types of talk as transaction. One is situation where the focus is on giving and receiving information and where the participant focus primarily on what is said or achieved. The second type are transactions which focus on obtaining goods or services. C. Talk as performance. This refers to public talk, that is, talk which transmits information before an audience, such as morning talks, public announcements, and speeches. Talk as performance tends to be in the form of monologue rather than dialogue, often follows a recognizable format, and is closer to written language than conversational language. B. Conversation. Definition of conversation. According to Goffman, Conversation is restrictively defined, might be identified as the talk occurring when a small number of participants come together and settle into what they perceive to be a few moments cut off from. According to Wikipedia, conversation is interactive communication between two or more people. Second, how conversation tends to be taught. Grammar, writing, and other skills are all very important, but for most students, conversation is the most important. Teaching conversational skills is much more challenging than teaching grammar, as the focus is not on accuracy but on production. Pragmatically, conversation lessons and exercises should first focus on building skills by eliminating some of the barriers that might be in the way of production. Here are some suggestions to help free up students in conversation. First, point out that it's not necessary to always speak the truth in class. Second, create lesson plans that focus on functional skills such as asking for permission, disagreeing, etc. Set micro-tasks such as the use of specific verbs, idioms, and etc. within overall speaking task. And the last, use tasks such as information gathering or problem-solving activities that encourage students to communicate in English in order to complete the task. Third, approaches in teaching conversation. In direct approach, oral communication skills are built up through question and answer exchanges between teachers and students, according to Richard and Rogers, 1986. In audiolingual approach, the teaching of a dialogue starts with the learners listening to the dialogue before repeating each line after the recording. The next step involves further practice with the replacement of certain key vocabulary until learners can form the key structures, according to Bill Grove. In these two approaches, the learner's imitation of key structures in the dialogue seems to be prioritized. By contrast, Dorning and Thurell, 1994, support an approach which emphasizes fluency tasks and consciousness-raising activities. Conversation creation in pairs or group to take advantage of explicit peer teaching with stimuli would be the next step. Conversation would be created by changing audience, style, or context before increasing the challenge with modified and expanded context. Fourth, conversation rules and structure. Conversations follow rules of etiquette because conversations are social interaction and therefore depend on social convention. Next, C. Context of communication strategies. Types of communication strategy. This allows a business to make employee needs and increase workplace knowledge. A. Verbal communication strategies can be broken down into the two categories of written and oral communication. B. Non-verbal communication strategies consist of mostly visual cues, such as body language, facial expressions, physical distance between communicators, or the tone of your voice. C. Visual communication strategies can be seen through signs, web pages, and illustrations. Chapter 3. Research Methodology. A. Research method. This research designed as a qualitative research. This research collected the data, analyze them, and draw a conclusion based on the data only. B. Setting of the research. This research conducted in English cafe course in Surakarta, Central Java. C. Time of research. The researcher conducted the research from 30 April 2019 until the end. D. Sources of the data. The source of the data in this research included events and information. E. Technique of collecting the data. In qualitative research, the researcher herself was the instrument. Thus, the researcher should have the theory and wide insight about what was being researched. Therefore, there were two techniques used in this research, namely observation and interview. F. Technique of analysis the data. Miles and Haberman suggest 4 steps of data analysis in qualitative study: data collection, data reduction, presentation, and conclusion. This process is called as interactive analysis. Because the topic of the research is concerned with pragmatic, in this study, the researcher applied pragmatic identity method. G. Data trustworthiness. In this research, the researcher used triangulation. Triangulation was divided into 4 techniques. First, triangulation by using resources. Second, triangulation by using methods. Third, triangulation by using investigator. And the last, triangulation by using theory. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.